1 in 3 is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to 1 in 3. I'm your host, Ingrid. We all have our own stories to tell, and some of us even turn those stories into books. My guest today, Deonna, did just that. Her debut book, The Measure of Enough, draws from her own experiences and those of her friends to tell a powerful story that sheds light on domestic violence. Here's Deonna. Hi, Deonna. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
I guess I gave it away. We're recording it at night, but before we get into what we're talking about today, could you just give some of a background of yourself so the listeners can get to know you?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Texas, and I am an Aggie. I am a single mom. I am a CPA by day, and which is my second profession. My first profession, I was a pediatric physical therapist. So I say I like to use both halves of my brain evenly. And I am an animal lover and a volunteer addict. So those are some things about me in addition to being an author. So I like to stay busy.
Yeah, obviously. My brother-in-law is a Longhorn, so I don't know, are they?
That's okay. We can still be friends.
Okay.
Yeah, those are as polar opposite as you can get.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so you're an author. Let's talk about, you have a book, The Measure of Enough. And do you want to, you don't have to give everything away, but do you want to just talk a little bit about what the book is about?
Yes, absolutely. So The Measure of Enough is about a young adult woman who she also, the entire story is set in Texas. And this young adult woman is a social worker. Her name is Casey Robinson. She comes from a very wealthy family in Texas. She is estranged from her parents and blames her mother for most of her childhood ills. And she gets a call to go back to her hometown of Glendale, Texas. And she really struggles with whether or not she should heed that call because, again, she blames her mom largely for her childhood problems. And once she makes that decision, she really starts to unravel and uncover some childhood secrets and some family secrets that lead her down some roads that she really was not anticipating. It's really a story that's infused with, there's themes of domestic abuse in there. There's themes of mother-daughter relationships. There's themes of really what it's like to think you know everything there is to know about your family, and in particular your parents, and realize that maybe they're just people after all, fighting their own battles, fighting their own struggles. And so there's all those things wrapped up into The Measure of Enough.
So, well, first of all, what made you want to write a book? I mean, you're so busy.
I know I
don't know
am.
how you have time to think of what to put in there.
You know, I had a client tell me one time that if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And I thought that's pretty good advice because it just seems like busy people are the ones that get things done. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of looking at things.
That is really interesting because I'm insanely busy and people keep giving me
People
stuff.
are always giving
And
you
I say,
things,
okay,
I bet,
I'll do
right?
it. I don't say no when I get it done.
So I have always been a writer of sorts since I was young. I can remember in middle school entering little writing contests and writing short stories and things like that. So, and I made a bucket list several years back. I mentioned I was a single mom, and several years back, my daughter and I, we sat down together and we made bucket lists. And this was on my bucket list. I'm going to write and publish a book. And this one took me about 5 years. Now, if you ever want to know what not to do when you write and publish a book, feel free to email me, call me, ask me. I can tell you all the things not to do because I did all of them, all wrapped up in one. But yeah, I learned from it. The best lessons are from our own mistakes, right? So, but yes, I hit them all, and it was definitely good learning experience for me, and it took a great long time to get this one right. But yeah, this one was a long process, and I was glad that it had come to an end when I was able to put the end on it and get it published and all those sorts of things. And then I will tell you, book number 2 is in editing right now, and that one was much faster because I'm a pretty quick learner. So
okay, so it's safe to say you did not plan on taking 5 years to write the first one. Did you, when you wrote the book, did you already have in mind what you wanted, a general idea of what you wanted the understory to be?
I did. Feel very strongly. So I am a domestic abuse survivor. And so I knew that I wanted the story to have that theme in it. I feel like that there are certain themes, certain stigmas, if you will, in our society that are either over sensationalized or underrepresented. Either way, they're not adequately and truthfully represented. So even though it's a work of fiction, I wanted to make sure that that particular part of the book and that particular character, when dealing with those subjects, was adequately depicted on the page. One thing in particular that really bothers me when I see a character that deals with domestic violence in any realm is, she's struggled or he struggled or whatever, and we go down this road, and then at the end of 288 pages, we've wrapped it up in a nice little bow, and she lives happily ever after. Well, that's just not the way that abuse cases work. And, I'm not telling you that you're forever scarred in as much as you think about it every single day for the rest of your life, and you can never have a productive life. And, that's far from the truth, but it does shape part of who you are, and it does make you think about things differently. And so I just wanted, I wanted that to come through on the page. So that was important to me.
I think that is important because domestic violence, it does leave a scar. And, wounds heal, scars are there, they remind you, they don't hurt anymore. But they're definitely still there. They're still a part of you. Were there any other themes that you really wanted to address in the book regarding domestic violence?
Regarding domestic violence, you said? Or besides domestic violence? What did you say?
Actually, we'll do both. Do others about domestic violence and then besides domestic violence.
Yeah. So there are other types of abuse in there, and there's a reader's guidance on the first page. So because I never would want anyone to be triggered by anything in there, so that was important to have the content guidance in there. But there's different sorts of domestic violence. So we've got emotional, we have physical, we have sexual, we have verbal. So one of the characters does experience multiple types. And if you read through a few different types of those are hit upon. And again, it was very important to me to consult with other folks that I knew that had been survivors and counselors and psychologists that I knew had worked with folks that were survivors to make sure that, does this read correctly? Hey, do you think this is an accurate representation of that? So that if it wasn't something that I personally had experienced, that I made sure that it was doing that subject justice.
Okay, so even though it is a fictional book, you pulled from real life experiences with other people plus yourself? Okay. So are the characters representative of anyone? If they are, you don't have to say specifically who they are, but did you pull personalities from people that you knew or know?
Yes. So a couple of the characters, they're not wholly so, like Casey is not wholly a specific person, and her mother Ruth is not a specific person, and Aunt Jackie is not a specific person. But as you're reading through, if you're someone that knows me really well, I have had several folks that are close to me say, okay, in chapter such and such, this scene with Aunt Jackie is acting just like so and so. You know, Bruce's personality is really reminding me of so and so. So I definitely pulled from about 3 different women that I felt like deserved to be represented in the.
Okay. And why did you think it was, why did you choose to tell it from Casey's point of view?
So originally, the story was told from 3 different points of view. There was Casey, there was Aunt Jackie, and there was Ruth. So it was a triplicate point of view novel. And then I cut out one of them, and it was told from 2 points of view. And then through the course of beta reading and editing and all like that, it seemed just to be a cleaner read if I told it just from a single point of view. So yeah, it was just a decision that I made.
Do you think that you got more of those themes that you were talking about with domestic violence? Do you think that they came through better by telling it from the daughter going back home and kind of witnessing how what she believed her family life to be like just sort of unravel versus telling it from somebody else's perspective? Does that make
I
sense?
do. I do, because really it's her story and her perception of the story. And, you know, we were also able to see how her perception influenced other folks, such as her best friend. She had also grown estranged from her best friend due to another set of misinformation. So we were able to see kind of how, you know, sometimes if you are manipulated within a certain situation, and you believe that person, and you put your faith in someone, and that faith is misplaced, then it can do more damage in a relationship besides just between you and that one individual. It can have much further reaching effects than you ever knew. And, you know, you're believing everyone's against you when maybe they really weren't in the first place.
I think I like that because perception is a huge part. It plays a huge part, right, in domestic violence, because what's happening behind your closed doors does not look like what's happening out in public. So everybody else may have this perception of a perfect family at, in your home versus what's really happening.
And I think it's also important to bring to light the fact that, Casey came from a very wealthy family, and her family was very wealthy. And there's still a fair number of folks out there that believe, domestic abuse and domestic violence happen in your low income families. That's what happens in the other neighborhoods. So, and that's some of these high profile cases have dispelled those rumors a little bit. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm just saying that that has happened. But I do still believe that there's a fair number of folks that think, oh, well, only the, only the poor folks, that's who beat their wives, or only the, whatever, that's when that happens. It's not your, like you said, it's not your neighbor next door. It's not the person that you work with at the bank. It's not your everyday person. And, at the very least, in the very back of the book, there's some resources. And at the very least, my hope for putting those there is not so that everyone can become an armchair psychologist, but just that you can recognize some of the signs. And I always say, if you see something, say something. So it doesn't ever hurt. And, or at the very least, maybe you want to spend one Saturday a quarter volunteering at the women's shelter, or something along those lines, some way that you could give back.
Right. And I haven't completed the book, but I have read, I have started reading it. And there's a few parts where I was like, ooh, I wonder what's really happening, like perception wise. What are some of the signs that people may see and not necessarily recognize that they could be domestic violence in someone?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest early signs that folks often miss, one of the red flags, are if you are continually, say you work in a place where you continually go once a month or once a quarter, you have a evening get together or a weekend get together, and Sally Lou can't ever go because her husband doesn't like her going out after 6 o'clock, or her husband doesn't like her going out on the weekends. Well, that really indicates some level of control. It indicates some level of isolation. So, maybe have a conversation with her. Like, are you guys always busy on the weekend? Or, what did you do this weekend? Again, I'm not saying you say, oh, well, obviously your husband is abusing you because he is controlling. But, maybe you want to ask another question or two. Maybe you want to see if she might want to go out to dinner one-on-one. Maybe she just doesn't like crowds. I don't know. But, once there's an isolation kind of situation going on, I think it's easier to abuse, and it's easier to control once you've taken away all of that person's friends. So that's something that, studies have shown that you see a lot as one of those first.
Oh, definitely. And they can be very sneaky in how they isolate too. It may not be just a blatant don't go out with your friends, but it could be, oh, I wanted to spend the weekend together, us together, and not with someone else. And they do it to your family too. So we were talking about other non-domestic violence themes that were in your book. So what would those be?
So there is, one of the characters does struggle with eating disorders, and that's something that I personally have experience with. So I was able to draw from that, and then again consult with an eating disorder specialist as well. to get some additional information in terms of treatment centers and things of that nature to kind of flesh out that character and that aspect of that.
Okay. Was there a particular reason you wanted to throw like the body image and eating disorder part into there?
I feel like a lot of times that does go hand in hand with controlling behavior, and that's an easy target, I think, for a lot of women, especially especially once we start to get older. So, I'm I'm 51 this year. I just turned 51, but I know, like when I turned 50, that was a big milestone for me. I mean, that was the first birthday that bothered me ever. I'd never been bothered by a birthday before. And then 50 it was a little depressing. And I thought, gosh, I've probably got more years behind me than I do in front of me. And my daughter was like, that's really depressing. Don't say that. And I'm like, well, I mean, just realistically. And I think that's why it bothered me so much. But I said, as women, we look at age differently. People say things about men like they're aging so well. They look so mature with their gray hair and and then the older we get, we're like, I mean, I can't even tell you what my natural color hair is anymore. I don't know. It could be purple for all I know. No idea. And so, we do everything in our power to cover up who we are naturally. We do Botox and we do hair color and we get things lifted and tucked and sucked in and all sorts of things. And so I think it's easy if you are female and you're with someone that's naturally controlling, that is such an easy target. So if you already have body image issues, that's so easy. And again, just natural aging, the older you get, the harder it is to lose weight. The older you get, the harder it is well, it's not hard, it's impossible to make things go back to the,
Gravity
way that they
wins
were
every
when you
time.
were 20. That just doesn't work. Gravity sets in. So, I think they often go hand in hand.
Did you use Texas just because of the familiarity of Texas for the setting?
I did. And I really anticipate that all of my books will be set in Texas. Yeah, I just like the idea of it.
Are any of your characters going to go from book to book?
They did not so the first and the second are both standalone, I will tell you. But the second book does have another issue in it, which is something that I'm hoping to carry through, is some type of societal or something I believe to be an issue that I feel like as a society we don't understand, we misrepresent, something along those lines.
Let's actually talk about book writing for a little bit, because I think a lot of survivors do turn to book writing because it's a therapeutic way to get their story out. And some individuals choose to do like a memoir, but do you mind going into some of those hurdles that you hit in those 5 years?
No, absolutely. So the biggest mistake I made, and I tell everyone this, and it's funny looking back, but this just shows how inexperienced I was. I mean, understand, I'm an accountant, so this was completely unfamiliar territory to me. I literally wrote the manuscript. It was about 2/3 as long as it is now. Understand, it was from 3 points of view. I wrote it, put the end, had no one else read it, went to a writing conference and pitched it to some agents. And they said, oh, gosh, that sounds really interesting. Would you send it to us? Absolutely, I will.
That's
exciting. So I
exciting.
did, yeah. And they all sent me back rejection notices, which is not uncommon because I mean, people get hundreds of rejection notices before they ever get picked up by an agent. So, in all of my infinite wisdom, and I have very thick skin, so I don't get my feelings hurt easily. I don't anything. And so I said, well, let me just go ahead and look up all of the publishers, agents that I can find with their email addresses, and I'll start sending them out in groups of like 25. So I sent them out to about 100. Again, I say to you, no changes. I was not on a strong learning curve there. Just sent them all out until finally I was telling a friend of mine who I had met along the way who had published a book, and she said, Deanna, no, don't do that. I said, well, I already did it. And she was like, well, you can't requery an agent. So you have to stop doing that. And I said, oh, okay, so you don't think maybe it's just they're not interested? And she said, no, you have to have other people read it and tell you what is wrong with it. Clearly there's something wrong with it. And I was like, oh, hurtful. Okay. So there was so much wrong with it. So I went back and spent about a year revising it. And then I worked with an editor. And then along the process, I decided I really didn't want I didn't want to be agented. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just different paths for different people. So, and then in the process, my mother passed away, and so I took about a year off of that and then got back on it again and then published it. Yes, it was quite the challenge.
When you sent it to beta readers, did you choose who you wanted to choose your own?
I did some of both. So I chose a few friends that were in the industry. And then I chose a couple of close friends that I knew, even though they're friends, they tell me the truth. And then I sent it to a company called The Spun Yarn, and they do manuscript reading, and they have forms which I read for them too. So I knew about them. And then they send you back they'll send it to 3 of their beta readers, and you don't get to choose, but the beta readers will fill out some parameters to say, these are the types of manuscripts I'm interested in reading, and then you kind of they match your manuscript with what the interest of the reader is. And then you get not only the reader's feedback, but then you get an overall summary from the company.
Okay. Were there any other challenges?
Parts of it were. There's a couple of scenes that were a little emotional for me to write, only because they were drawn from my own personal experience. But the rest of it, much of it was from other folks' experiences, or, just something that I concocted. I kind of pieced things together and, and concocted it. So yeah.
For anybody out there who may be thinking of starting a book, would you suggest they do it? Would you suggest they take a class? Is there any first steps that you think would be beneficial for somebody?
Yeah, I would always tell folks, I am a big proponent of you'll never regret what you don't try. So, why not try it? Another thing that I learned along the way is I knew this about myself. I absolutely hate to ask for help. I am I can do it myself kind of person. And I really learned during this process to ask for help. I am part of a group that I acquired along the way, or I was fortunate to find along the way, called WFWA, Women's Fiction Writers Association. And it's just exactly what it sounds like. It's a big group of women who write women's fiction. And so in that group are the most lovely group of women from all over the world. And so it's, everyone supporting everyone else. And in that, there's folks that are traditionally published, folks that are published by small presses, folks that are published independently, people that you have seen their names on bestseller lists, folks that they have not been published yet, just everywhere in the gamut. But the point of that is, if there's a question, someone can answer it. And almost certainly, someone can help you through it. So one of the things that I am terrible at is technology. I'm very technologically challenged. So, in fact, the staff at my office will just make all sorts of jokes about it, because I'm like, well, why can't we just write that down on a sticky note and use that? I don't know why you all want me to send it to you in an email. But so, I thought, well, I really want to self-publish, but my hesitation with this was, I don't think I can do the formatting and be able to upload it like it needs to be done. And so I met this gal along the way about probably a year and a half ago. She was like, well, we can do this. And it's turned into the most lovely and amazing friendship story ever. We literally talk almost every day now, and we're each other's critique partner. And, I can read her stuff. I'm an excellent proofreader. And so, we can help each other out in different ways. So, but you have to be able to, be willing to ask for help. You can't do it all on your own. I don't know that you necessarily have to take a class if you have a good understanding of the writing process. But even if you do need to take a class, that's okay too. But if your goal is to write a book, write a book. Just don't consider yourself a failure if you don't make the New York Times bestseller either. Make sure that you know what your goal is. Is your goal to write a book for yourself? Is your goal to write a book to say you did it? Or is your goal to write a book and sell 100,000 copies? Make sure you identify what that goal is. I mean, for me, my book has done fairly well, and I'm happy with that. But I just had a talk at the library, one of the local libraries, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I'm going to be honest, I am happy with every copy that is purchased. It thrills me to death. But honestly, I'm just as thrilled if somebody tells me, I borrowed your copy from the library and then I recommended it to my friend who went and checked the book out from the library. Because for me, the goal is for somebody to have gotten something out of the measure of enough, and somebody to have read the book and found something in it that they related to, or that touched their life, or somehow they came out changed in some manner than they were when they started it. And that was a goal for me. But everybody's goal is different. So make sure you define your goal before you start.
That makes sense, because that will sort of direct which way you need to go and how much help you need to enlist too. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about?
Can't think of anything.
Okay. If anyone wanted to get in touch with you or get your book, how can they do that?
So the book is available on Amazon. Just type in The Measure of Enough by Deanna Kay and it should pop right up there. My website is deannakay.com. A fun little pop-up box will pop up right as soon as you log in, and it will prompt you to register for the newsletter. I promise I do not inundate you with tons and tons of newsletters. The newsletter goes out about once a month, and that just keeps you up to date with, if you're here local, any local events that I've got coming up. It'll keep you updated on the second book, and then I've got a fun little article every month. So there's that. And then on Instagram, if you're on Instagram, you can go to Deanna Kay Books, and Facebook, it's Deanna Kay Author.
Do you have any lasting words of wisdom or encouragement that you would like to leave with listeners?
I would encourage everyone to make a bucket list, cross things off your bucket list, and keep adding to your bucket list. And take care of yourself.
I love it. Thank you so much, Deanna, for your time and coming on today and talking about the measure of enough and everything else.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again, Deanna, for joining me today, and thank you, Warriors, for listening. I've included the links Deanna was referring to, as well as her 1 in 3 profile in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 Podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.